I never imagined one late night at work would tip my entire life upside down. I've always considered myself a loyal man. Married for 5 years, faithful, committed. But routine has a way of dulling even the sharpest edges. My wife, Melissa, is a good woman, smart, caring, grounded. We built a life of shared habits and Sunday rituals. But somewhere along the way, we lost the spark. We talked, yes, but it was all about bills, groceries, schedules. She was exhausted, I was distracted, and somehow, intimacy became just another item we postponed on our to-do list. My job in finance wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. And when Olivia was promoted to department head 6 months ago, everything at the office shifted. She wasn't just attractive, she was magnetic. The kind of presence that turned heads without trying. Not just because of her looks, though that was part of it. It was the way she owned a room, the calm authority in her voice, the effortless way she smiled without giving too much away. At first, I kept my distance. I noticed her, of course, but I reminded myself where the lines were. Then came the Peterson account, a nightmare of a project that required all hands on deck. Late nights became the norm, and Olivia and I often ended up being the last two in the office. The first few nights, we barely talked beyond work. But on one particular Thursday, as the clock pushed past 10 and the office had long gone quiet, something shifted. I offered to grab coffees from the kitchen. When I returned, she was leaning back in her chair, heels off, eyes closed. "You always push yourself this hard?" I asked, half joking. She cracked one eye open. "I could ask you the same." I sat down across from her, sipping the cheap instant brew. Married life doesn't exactly reward 9-to-5ers. Got to keep showing my value. She raised an eyebrow. "Your wife doesn't appreciate the long hours?" I shrugged. "We've just grown tired, I guess." "She's always tired. I'm always at work. We don't fight, we just exist." She didn't respond right away. "Then, I know the feeling." I looked at her, surprised. "You?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Long story. But yeah, sometimes being strong means pretending not to notice how lonely you really are." That caught me off guard. The air between us thickened. I felt the weight of that silence. It wasn't flirtatious, not obviously, but it was intimate in a way that made me uneasy. Over the next few weeks, those late nights continued. We talked more. She asked about my college years, my favorite music, my dreams outside of work. I found myself answering too freely. She listened with this quiet intensity, and in turn, she opened up about her past, a failed engagement, the pressure of being a woman in leadership, the nights she spent staring at the ceiling in her penthouse apartment, feeling like a guest in her own life. There was a moment, an exact second, when I realized I was no longer just working late. I was staying for her. Not that I admitted it to myself. I justified it by the project deadlines, the demands of upper management, the fact that she needed support. But deep down, I knew better. Then there was that night. It was raining hard, sheets of water sliding down the windows like a warning. The office was empty, lights dimmed except for our small island of screens. I had taken off my jacket and loosened my tie. She sat beside me, going over the numbers again. At some point, we were close, shoulder to shoulder, and I felt the heat from her skin. She smelled like citrus and something faintly floral. Not overpowering, just enough to notice. She leaned over to look at my screen, her hair brushing my cheek. I didn't move. "You're good at this," she murmured. "You don't give yourself enough credit." I turned to respond, and our faces were inches apart. That pause hung in the air, longer than it should have. I saw her pupils dilate. I didn't kiss her.
She didn't kiss me.
But something passed between us, a signal sent and received. No words necessary. I left that night with my heart racing and my guilt gnawing. Melissa was asleep when I got home. I stood in the hallway, staring at her silhouette in bed, wondering what was happening to me. The next morning, I promised myself it was nothing. Just stress. Just projection. Just tired minds sharing too much in the quiet of night. But deep down, I knew something had started. Not an affair, not yet, but something more dangerous. an emotional current pulling me somewhere I shouldn't go. I told myself I could control it, that I was still the man I believed myself to be, that nothing had happened. But something had. The boundaries weren't just blurred, they were cracking. I could feel it, and I didn't know how to stop it. After that night, everything shifted. I started anticipating work in a way I hadn't in years. I wasn't just showing up for the deadlines, I was showing up for her. Olivia. We didn't acknowledge what had happened, but it was there, thick and unspoken. The air between us had changed. And I wasn't fighting it. If anything, I was feeding it. We began texting after hours. At first, it was about work, schedules, documents, quick updates. Then it turned into jokes. Then personal updates. One night, she texted a photo of her dinner with the caption, "Gourmet sadness." I replied with a beer and cold pizza, and we joked about who was more pathetic. It was harmless on the surface, but we both knew it wasn't. Melissa noticed I was on my phone more. She'd ask who I was texting, and I'd say it was about work. Technically, not a lie. But the tone? The smile I tried to hide while reading her messages? The way I deleted our chats before bed? I knew exactly what I was doing. Then came the weekend work trip. A conference in Chicago. Olivia said she wanted me there for strategy meetings. Melissa raised an eyebrow when I told her. She didn't fight me on it, just said, "Be careful. It's easy to forget what matters when you're tired and alone." That sentence stayed with me on the flight. At the hotel, Olivia and I had separate rooms. We kept things professional all day. But that night, after dinner, we sat in the lobby bar. There was wine. Too much, maybe. We started talking about regrets, how quickly life passes, how easy it is to settle for comfort over happiness. I told her I missed feeling wanted. She told me she missed being seen. We paused, looked at each other like we were waiting for permission. Then she reached out, brushed something from my cheek, something that wasn't there. My heart pounded. I didn't pull away. She didn't stop. It was slow, but inevitable. A kiss that didn't ask for forgiveness, only release. Back in her room, we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Every hesitation dissolved the moment her hands touched my skin. It wasn't reckless, it was desperate. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Her body, her breath, the way she said my name like it mattered. It wasn't just about sex. It was the validation, the connection, the feeling of being wanted without conditions. The next morning, I woke up tangled in her sheets and guilt. She kissed my shoulder and whispered, "You don't have to explain anything." But I did. To myself, at least. I told myself I was human. I told myself Melissa wouldn't have to know. I told myself it could be a one-time mistake. It wasn't. Back home, everything felt muted. Melissa greeted me with a smile, kissed my cheek, asked how the trip went. I lied with ease. Too much ease. The intimacy we shared felt rehearsed, mechanical. I hated myself for noticing it, for comparing. But I did. I tried to focus on work, tried to keep my distance. But Olivia didn't make it easy. She wasn't clingy. She wasn't emotional. She played it cool. But the tension remained. And so did the temptation. It didn't take long before it happened again. Another late night. Another excuse. Another moment where we stopped pretending to be just colleagues. This time, I didn't resist. I welcomed it. The secrecy made it addictive. Meeting in quiet corners, careful glances across meetings, slipping out early under the pretense of errands. At home, I was quieter, more distant. Melissa asked me one night, "Are you okay? You feel far away lately." I lied again, just tired. But it was more than that. I had started living a double life. One where I was needed and desired. One where I wasn't just someone's husband, I was someone's escape. Then came the first crack. One night, as I showered, Melissa came into the bathroom and placed my phone on the counter. "You got a text from Olivia." I didn't read it, just saw the name. "You don't usually text your boss this late."
Her voice was calm.
Too calm. I played it off. "We're under pressure with end-of-quarter reports." She nodded, didn't push. But something in her eyes had shifted. That night, I deleted everything again. Cleared threads. Removed apps. Olivia noticed and messaged me on a private platform. "Everything okay?" I replied, getting harder. She said, "Tell me when you want out." But I didn't. Not yet. We became careful. No more hotel meetups. No more long texts. Just quick glances, coded messages, stolen moments. The physical part faded slightly, but the emotional tether was stronger than ever. It was no longer just an affair.
It was a second life.
Melissa started trying harder. Planning dates. Wearing lingerie. Asking about my day with real curiosity. I saw the effort. I felt it. And it broke something in me. Because it wasn't her fault. She was trying. And I was lying straight to her face. One evening, after a family dinner, Melissa held my hand in the car and said, "I miss us." I didn't know what to say. Because the version of us she missed might have already been gone. I began to see what I was becoming. A man who compartmentalized affection. Who split his loyalty into pieces. Who smiled at home and burned in secret. I wasn't proud. But I wasn't stopping either. What started as a moment of connection had become a tangled web of deceit, and I was in deeper than I'd ever planned. I kept telling myself I had control, that I could manage it. But every passing day proved that was a lie too. Olivia wasn't asking for more.
She wasn't pressuring me.
But the emotional weight was building. It was only a matter of time before something broke. And I didn't know which part of my life would collapse first. The guilt didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, showing up in small moments, a glance from Melissa that lingered too long, a question I hesitated to answer, a lie that came too easily. Olivia and I had crossed every line. And yet, neither of us spoke about what came next. We existed in that suspended space where passion and secrecy met, both of us pretending it wouldn't catch up to us. At home, Melissa began noticing the change. She didn't say much, but her silence spoke louder than questions. She watched me more. Her touches became less certain, like she was reaching for someone already slipping away. I started coming home earlier to make up for it, tried to be present. But even in those moments, I was fractured. Thinking of Olivia's voice, her scent, the way she looked at me like I was still a man worth wanting. Olivia, on the other hand, stayed composed. If she was feeling anything deeper, she didn't let it show. She was never needy, never dramatic. That made it easier to keep going. She'd send a single message, "Tonight?" And I'd find myself making another excuse. Meetings, traffic, last-minute projects. Melissa had stopped questioning me out loud, but I could feel her watching every word I said. One night, I came home to find dinner waiting, candles lit, music playing. Melissa smiled like she was trying to pull us back to something that no longer existed. She wore the same dress she'd worn on our honeymoon. I sat across from her, pretending to be moved. But I felt hollow. Everything she was offering used to feel like home. Now it felt like guilt. We made love that night. And for the first time, I felt like I was betraying both of them. Melissa because I was lying, Olivia because I was pretending. The next morning, Melissa was glowing. I sat in the kitchen drinking coffee, feeling like a fraud. At work, the cracks were forming. A colleague made a comment about how close Olivia and I seemed. It was offhand, maybe a joke, but I froze. Olivia handled it with grace, brushing it off with a laugh. But afterward, she messaged me, "People are starting to notice." I replied, "We should slow down." She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, it was short. "Let me know when you've decided what you want." I stared at that message for a long time. Things didn't slow down, though. They just changed. Less passion, more tension. More hiding. It stopped feeling like an escape and started feeling like a weight. The thrill was gone, replaced by fear. Every conversation with Melissa felt like navigating a minefield. Every moment with Olivia felt like a countdown. One day, Melissa found a receipt. A hotel charge. From weeks ago. She asked calmly, "You said you stayed at the Hilton. This says Hyatt." I stuttered.
Lied.
Said there was a last-minute change, a booking issue. She didn't push. Just nodded and walked away. But from that moment, I knew she didn't believe me anymore. I started having nightmares. Melissa leaving. Olivia showing up at our door. My coworkers finding out. My world collapsing in slow motion. The lies had multiplied, branched into every corner of my life. I was constantly thinking 2 steps ahead, what I said, where I was, who saw me. I tried ending things with Olivia once. Told her I needed space, time to figure things out. She nodded, said she understood. But a week later, she called late at night, voice trembling for the first time. "I know I said I was fine, but I'm not." And just like that, I was pulled back in. The next time Melissa asked if I was okay, I told her I was just stressed. She brought me coffee the next morning with a note that said, "I'm still here. When you're ready to talk." I felt something break inside me. I didn't deserve her. I didn't deserve any of it. At work, I noticed Olivia was more distant. Not cold, but less invested. One evening she said, "We both know this can't last. So, what are we doing?" I had no answer. I just looked at her and said nothing. That silence said everything. Then came the close call. Melissa borrowed my car while hers was in the shop. I'd forgotten I'd left Olivia's scarf in the back seat. When I came home, it was folded neatly on my desk. Melissa didn't mention it. But that night, she didn't come to bed. The next morning, she served breakfast like nothing was wrong. I watched her quietly, waiting for the explosion. It never came. That silence was worse than yelling. She was done talking. She was watching me unravel on my own. Olivia and I stopped meeting in person. The texts grew fewer, shorter. One-word replies. Eventually, none at all. There wasn't a fight. No dramatic ending. Just a slow fade into nothing. And that somehow hurt more than if she'd screamed. I realized too late that I wasn't losing just one person. I was losing both. Olivia had been my escape, my mirror, the part of me that still craved attention, passion, danger. Melissa was the part one took for granted. The part one assumed would always wait. But now she was slipping away in silence, piece by piece. I sat in my car one evening outside our house, hands shaking, unable to go in. I had become everything I said I'd never be. A man who lied, who cheated, who risked everything for something temporary. There was no one left to blame. The affair was over, but the damage was just beginning. Melissa didn't confront me, not with accusations, not with tears. She just changed. The warmth in her voice was replaced by neutrality. Her affection became routine, like muscle memory without feeling. I started to notice the absence of things. No goodnight kisses, no curious questions, no subtle touches when passing by. That silence screamed louder than any fight. She had figured it out, and she was deciding what to do in her own way. The days that followed felt suspended. I went through the motions. Work, home, smiles where they were expected. Olivia was gone completely. No messages, no emails outside work necessities. She'd moved on, and I wasn't sure if that made it easier or harder. I used to fantasize about a life with her, but now, the reality of everything I'd lost was clearer than ever. Melissa finally asked me to sit down one night. No warning, no build-up. Just a quiet, "We need to talk." My heart sank before she even started. She looked at me, not with anger, but with resignation. I don't know when it started. I don't know how long it lasted, but I know it happened. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. She continued. What hurts more is how well you lied through it. I wanted to explain, to defend, to tell her it wasn't about love or hate or her. But the truth was I had no defense. I had chosen it. Again and again. I said nothing. She stood up. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to beg you to stay. I'm just done trying to be enough for someone who doesn't know what he wants. I moved into the guest room that night. And just like that, the slow crumble turned into a collapse. Days passed without real conversation. We divided responsibilities like co-workers, not partners. The intimacy was gone. Not just physical, everything that made us had withered. At work, I kept my head down. Olivia avoided me without hostility. She had neatly tucked everything we shared into the past. I envied that. I was still drowning in it. Every room reminded me of something. Every glance at Melissa, every photo, every routine. One afternoon, Melissa handed me an envelope. Inside was a list of therapists. If you want to fix this, you'll start here. Not for me. For yourself. She walked away before I could respond. I called one. I sat in that chair, explaining how I wasn't the kind of man who cheats, even though I clearly was. I unpacked the restlessness, the search for validation, the boredom I disguised as stress. The therapist didn't excuse it, but she helped me see it clearly. I had let dissatisfaction become an excuse for betrayal. Weeks turned to months. Melissa and I lived in the same house but in separate emotional worlds. I did the work, therapy, self-reflection, journaling. I didn't do it to win her back. I did it because I was finally starting to understand how broken I'd become. She noticed. I could tell. Her silence grew less sharp. Her eyes, while guarded, sometimes lingered a little longer. I stopped trying to fix everything at once. I just showed up, honest, consistent, transparent. One night, I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. Simple. No pressure. She hesitated, then nodded. We didn't talk much, but we walked side by side. It was the first moment that felt human in a long time. Time did its work. Slowly. Some days, she looked at me like a stranger. Other days, she shared a joke, a memory, a story. I stopped waiting for forgiveness. I focused on being someone worth forgiving. I wrote Olivia a letter I never sent. I thanked her for the truth she forced me to face. I admitted that what we had wasn't love, it was escape. She was a mirror reflecting what I'd lost in myself. It wasn't her fault. We were both filling empty spaces. But it had cost more than either of us expected. Months later, Melissa and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. She asked, "Do you want to stay married?" I answered without hesitation.
Yes.
But only if you wanted to. She nodded. Then we rebuild. From the truth. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a real one. No promises of perfection. No guarantee we'd make it. Just two people trying, honestly this time. Without secrets. Without lies. I lost a lot. But I found something, too. The truth has a way of burning everything down before it clears the path. What came after wasn't romantic. It was raw, uncomfortable, humbling. But it was real. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.